race for City of Charleston District 6 is now in a runoff between William Dudley Gregorie and Amy Brennan. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one-on-one with William Dudley Gregorie. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Well, Councilman Gregorie,
hi.
How are you?
Incredibly well. Life is good.
What? You talk about life is good.
Yes.
I was thinking this on my way. You are a two-time mayor candidate, I believe.
3 times.
3-time mayor candidate.
Yes.
You've been on city council, I believe, since 2009.
Yes.
But now you are in a fight for your political life.
I'm in a fight, yes.
How did we get here?
I think it has more to do with consolidating power by Tecklenburg than anything else. And I think he wants to design a council where he has his 7 votes in his pockets like Mayor Riley, but Tecklenburg is no Mayor Riley.
Obviously, you and your particular group, as far as I know, your lawyer, Erica Harrison and whatnot, went before the election commission as well as the other side, Amy Brennan and her group, basically petitioned to have a runoff.
Yes. Well, Ms. Brennan was not petitioning for a runoff.
Okay.
I felt that their approach was voter suppression to try to get 7 legitimate votes thrown out. And for me, given the women's suffrage movement, given the Civil Rights Voting Act of 1964, I was a little disappointed in my opposition because I clearly thought that what they were attempting to do was voter suppression.
When you were sitting in front of the election commission, I believe the day right after the election, and then just a couple of days ago when I saw you in front of City Hall, what was it like to be you?
Exciting. Just another challenge. I felt that things turned out the way they did because perhaps the people needed a voice to really uncover what is truly going on in this election. And it has very little to do with my opponent or myself. It has more to do with an attempt to just consolidate power.
You talk about your voice. How would you use your voice if you are elected to city council, that is?
Well, I think that my power comes from the people, and that all power lies in the people. And I won't do anything different than I've been doing in the past. Unlike my candidate, my opponent, I don't necessarily support the Tecklenburg agenda. I don't think that any council person should support anything other than the needs of their community. So I feel that my voice is very, very important for the neighborhoods of James Island and downtown Charleston to make sure that the many things that we have in place to make their livability better becomes realized. My opponent seems to be anti-everything, anti-526. Anti-housing, and by that I mean anti-development means that we are not going to be able to do the kinds of affordable housing necessary for the people. My opponent is just anti-business. When we talk about a moratorium on hotels, that's anti-business, that's anti-jobs, because for every room a hotel develops, 1.4 jobs are created. So I don't think that my opponent has really thought things through and does not have a clear understanding of how council works. And it's important to me, because I am a member of this district, that we have the best person to represent our interests. We don't have time to start over. It takes a while for any council member to assemble the kind of support and the kind of votes that are necessary to do the needs in the neighborhood. Someone coming in as a freshman, it'll throw us 3 or 4 years behind. And I don't think that as a part of this district that we could afford to stop in midstream and start over. And many of the things that we're attempting to do may not come to fruition.
If I had a pie chart behind you, what would you list as your accomplishments as Charleston City Councilman going back to 2009?
I think that, it's always been our campaign mantra that it is the water stupid. For over 100 years, we've been battling flooding in many of the neighborhoods downtown and many of the neighborhoods on the island. And I could point to the Septima Clark Parkway drainage project, which will eradicate the problem that we've been having all of my life around Burke School, around our middle school, safety issues for our children, as well as Sumter in Fishburne Street. Those two flooding issues will be eradicated once the Septima Clark project is completed. I was able to vote on that. I was able to make sure that the interests of District 6 was taken care of. No different than when I represented parts of West Ashley. When we had pump issues in Washington Park. No different than when we had flooding problems in Wagner Terrace and had to do some corrections on the flooding station to make sure that sections of Wagner Terrace won't be plagued with continuing flooding. That's not to say that all the issues are taken care of, but it could take me hours to tell you what we have done, planting trees, sidewalks, the Arthur Christopher Gym. I mean, there's so many things that we have been able to accomplish since 2009, and there's so much more work to do. And I just don't want the efforts of these neighborhoods to be stifled for another 2 or 3 years. I've been working diligently with neighborhoods on James Island with regard to flooding as a result of certain developments. Even recently at the Planning Commission meeting, I did not support the Central Park cluster development because of the potential flooding that would come from its development on our established neighborhoods on the island. I've been working with them now since I became their council member to try to eradicate as many of those livability issues as we can. I support the Folly Road overlay, and I think that Folly Road overlay would go far to decrease the density on the island. I support the Rethink Folly Road. I voted for that. While it hasn't been implemented, I think if it is, it will in fact help with some of the traffic woes that we have on the island. I'm a part of the intergovernmental committee made up of all the municipalities on James Island, and I truly think we are in fact one James Island. And the last thing that we voted on was a resolution to do an intergovernmental drainage study of the island. So there's just so many things that are in the pipeline, so many things that we've accomplished over the years that I really truly want to continue and don't want us to start from scratch. I think it's important for the voters to really vote for who they know and don't vote for the one they don't know, because we really have no idea of who my opponent is. She's never ever attended any neighborhood meetings until now. How can you really realize the needs of neighborhoods if you've not been a part of their struggle, if you've not had your boots on the ground when their neighborhoods and their homes were being flooded? So for me, it's kind of hypocritical to now say that you're for all these things, but when we were struggling and continue to struggle as neighborhoods, this person was nowhere to be found. So for that person to now want to lead the charge to address the needs of our neighborhoods, don't even know what they are. So again, I just don't think that we have the time to start from scratch. And I say we, because I am a part of the district.
Who do we know as William Dudley Gregorie?
We know an independent thinker. I've never been one to just get on the bandwagon. I've always been a person to analyze what the issues are before I come up with a solution to the problem. And I think that it's very important that any council representative be an independent thinker and not a rubber stamp for any particular agenda other than the agenda of the people.
I know you mentioned it a little bit, but what is the state of the quality of life when you think of this and its future?
I think that we do have to protect the livability and quality of life in our city, and to make sure that our city does not become every other city USA.
Okay.
It's our city's unique charm that brings millions and millions of tourists and dollars to our community. So we have to make sure that we have a city that continues to be livable. We didn't become the #1 travel destination overnight. That took years of planning by Mayor Riley and our council. And I think that we've done a fairly good job in trying to balance development with livability and quality of life. That is not to say, however, that when we look at our city's master plan, which is the Century 5 plans,
Right.
that we should not make some adjustments to that plan, particularly as it relates to existing zoning practices on the island and other parts of the city, to make sure that those zoning ordinances come into the 21st century. Many of those ordinances were made many, many years ago. That's why you're seeing the proliferation of developments. Many of those, most of those zoning predate me on council. So what I've been able to do in terms of working within the parameters of the law is to sit down with the developers and say, developers, you know 400 units is just not going to work here. And so along with my neighbors on the island and neighbors downtown, we've been able to, in many cases, to substantially decrease the number of units that many of these developers are capable of putting in. So I do think that, you know, my record is very clear that I'm working for the people. All power lies in the people. And as long as the people wants me to do something to protect them and protect their livability, I'm going to fight for it. I will continue to be a fighter for the people of this city. No weapons formed shall prosper.
William Dudley Gregorie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
Anytime.